Now, one of the biggest political news from our friends across the Pacific Ocean, the ouster of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, basically the number one top dog in American legislature. Now, this is the first incident of its kind because previously we have seen speakers resign, speaker forced to resign because the party have changed. So joining me today, Lyra.
Hello.
And Lyra, we did an episode on the appointment of Kevin McCarthy, February 2023, right?
Yes.
And now today I want to talk about this, but more importantly, I think we want to talk about how it relates to Malaysia because, today we are not really diving deep into the American politics, but the first thing that really kind of, now maybe before we go into the emotion that sort of inspired us to do this week's episode is maybe just give a little bit of background on McCarthy ouster, right? So to understand the whole story, we had to go back to February 2023. And, we had the American Congress basically uncontrolled spending for decades. And suddenly the populist movement put different congressmen in, someone like Matt Gaetz who wanted true limited government. And so you remember the whole story, we talked about how McCarthy had to go through so many rounds of voting, right?
I think close to 20 rounds.
Yeah, and it was like people were like, this was unprecedented. But they did eventually elect him, but on a few conditions, and those are very stringent conditions. The first one, of course, he promised there will be no more omnibus legislation. Omnibus, basically, you put everything in a few thousand pages, For example, you want to fund the security or the war, and then the other side say, let's fund Ukraine also, let's fund LGBT also, etc., etc. So you can't separate the issue. You have to support all the issue or none. So they promise not to do that, and sometimes it's called single issue appropriations. Then the most important one is they allowed the rule to allow for a single vote motion to remove the speaker. That means anyone from the Republican conference, if they put a proposal to remove the speaker, it will be put to vote. And that time we were talking about it and we find it quite interesting that McCarthy would even agree to that. But he really had no choice at that time. So Lara, what's your reaction to the whole thing? Now we kind of discussed about the Malaysian angle, but before that, just generally, was this expected or unexpected for you?
Well, actually, I was thinking if Kevin McCarthy did purposely sort of challenge Gaetz to, put forth a motion to really force him out of this. Because obviously, I think Gaetz was a bit undecided also, in the sense that he didn't think that actually they will garner so much Democrat votes to really just cause that whole speaker to be removed.
Yeah, and I think the events leading out to that motion will really help us to understand, because some of you may be reading. Now, we want to encourage you that if you are interested in American politics, don't read the mainstream media, because what they report are really from establishment, from a globalist point of view. Now, of course, we are not going to tell you which publication to read also, maybe not this time. But if you have been watching our show, you kind of get some hints and drifts, some of the other alternative media that will give you a different point of view. But anyway, the whole story was that if you've been reading the news, the American government are heading into shutdown. Why shutdown? Is because the job of the Congress is to approve budget. So when there's no approval, the government will have to stop. Now, of course, it doesn't mean the whole government stop, but some of the non-essential stuff will stop. The essential things, of course, will continue: health, military, defense. So McCarthy managed to broker through what they call a CR, continual resolution. That means the government will continue for 45 days. But what's significant about this CR was that it was voted with significant help from the Democrat, from Nancy Pelosi and Gaetz. And many people, almost 100 Republicans, voted against this CR. And now this CR was very vexing to a lot of the congressmen who wanted to limit spending, because it included things like more funding for Ukraine. So I think one of the national poll already showed that more than 70% of the American public are against more funding for Ukraine. Not because they hated Ukraine or anything, there simply isn't enough money for their own domestic use. So that's a whole thing. So anyway, I think going back to Gaetz, you mentioned that he was a bit too minded. I think the ironic thing was he thought he didn't want to do it because the Democrats might come out to rescue McCarthy. And how ironic, every single one of them voted against him.
Yes.
And so, but anyway, this was the background. And then you started to see the reaction from many of the congressmen, and they start to accuse Gaetz of not being a team player, of being selfish, of being a spy for the Democrats. And so the whole thing is there's an issue. Some say he's not a team player. You shouldn't trust him anymore. So Lara, here's the thing. I think now we start to see the tension between a congressman and elected representative, their allegiance. Is his or her allegiance to the party or to the voter? What say you?
Well, honestly, I think it should be a scenario of both. I mean, if we look at McCarthy, right, I mean, his strength is really that he was able to get a lot of fundings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to run an election campaign, we just know that you need millions. And we're not talking about just 1 million, 2 million. You need probably like something like 300 million. And McCarthy is one that can really rally behind those sort of support. I mean, whether or not we like him as a speaker, I think that's besides the point. But he does have those sort of capability to really just cause donors to really just come out and put in the money for the campaign. So we are talking about next year, that 2024, there's going to be election that is ongoing. I mean, the presidential election. So you need a lot of money for that. So I think for certain reasons, I would say that it's a scenario of both. It's because for this sort of thing, you do need the party's support to really just cause a campaign to work.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I would say that there's pros and cons. But also on the other side, I felt like, I mean, given the scenario back here in Malaysia, I mean, with the Uni Party, I think people are a bit unhappy. People are probably running out of patience with the performance and things like that. So if you continuously use the reasons of, oh no, I have to stay loyal to the party, I've stayed loyal to the Uni Party, I think that's a bit of a, well, I would say voters might not be happy to listen to it. So I think that there should be moments whereby you are really there to serve the people.
Yeah, it just kind of reminded me of what political analyst Wong Chin-Hua was commenting, because he said, look, unlike the American systems, we do not have a lot of ways to mitigate a non-performance. For example, we can't just send someone to have a primary. You know, in United States, every 2 years, the Congress go into elections, and anyone can challenge the incumbent to represent either of the main party. So that's called primary. So here is like you vote for someone, you're stuck with him or her for 5 years. So I guess it's really very different system. But do you feel like in Malaysia we are starting to see, I mean, the Westminster system has always been very huge on party disciplines. You know, they even have a specific post, a very senior person will be called the party whip. So basically whip you to make sure that you are in line with the party's position, and I think about the most whippy party in the whole Malaysia would be DAP.
Yep.
And you go outside and they will say you're out. So they, I mean, would you say it's fair to call them they are more into the collective?
Yeah, of course. I think they are very much a communal sort of party.
We the one are many or whatever. Yeah.
Because I mean, the moment that you see how the moment that we have the formation of the unity government, they are very, very quick to just come into line and say, look, we are going to rally all our support behind. Oh, no. I mean, barring aside all the things that they have said prior to the election.
Yep.
So I think that just really shows that they are also politicians, and they're really just going behind, and whichever thing that works, then that story will sell.
Yep. Now we'll come back more to Malaysia in a while, but let's come back to what Gaetz did, right? And of course, the whole situation was every single promise Kevin McCarthy made, he didn't fulfill. Not a single issue appropriation, still omnibus. And basically, I think days leading up to it, McCarthy basically there Gaetz, you put out a motion and see if you will be successful or not. And he did, and that's why once I was just reading the news and say, you know, once the motion was put and they vote, I think it was to the surprise of the Republican conference that it was successful. And after that, I think they say everyone go calm down, go back. And one of the congressmen from Republican was saying if they had continued, there would be fist fight already, because they were so outraged. But I just find it very hypocritical for them to be outraged, because here is the political elite class. They have caused the country to go into a debt in the region of, I mean, different people have different calculation, but some say 40 trillion US dollar. That means the interest payment in the next few years will be 1 trillion per year. Think about that. 1 trillion. I don't think Malaysia combined GDP in their entire existence is more than 1 trillion US dollar. So America have to pay interest per year just on our debt. So it's like, it's like, I think, I would feel that Gaetz was pushed into this and he was really outraged. But here's the thing. We can learn a lot from the reaction of the mainstream media. Now, you have heard us say a few times already, right? We're not really huge into mainstream media because we know they serve a political master, they serve the globalists. We don't want to sound like a conspiracist, right? I mean, we are not a conspiracist. But I think here's our observation, and you can test it out. If you see the mainstream media all rallying around a single issue, that means they are for a single issue, then highly likely they are rallying, they are trying to support their master. So the reality was that Gaetz was attacked by maybe 99% of MSM.
Very much so. I mean, all the media is really just showing that he is being left, right bombarded by all these people, and then I think even there are threats that are saying that they're gonna really just cause this 8 Republicans who really cause the Freedom Caucus guys to be voted out also.
They want to exclude them from Congress. And to show you how significant that is, in the entire history of the United States, not more than 10 members or congressmen have been expelled from the Congress. Not more than 10 in their entire 200 plus years of history. So that is something happening, right? But I just felt like, I think he had stirred the hornet's nest. So probably he's doing something right.
Well, I mean, do you reckon that what he does, is there some sort of similarity with Syed Saddiq?
Yeah, maybe, but the only thing is, I mean, people are framing that, he is working with the Democrat, but the way I see it was that he used Democrat. It's like he knew that Democrat will hate anyone, whether it's McCarthy or Jim Jordan, regardless of who is nominated, they will rather themselves to become the speaker. So really, I think in the end, if Jim Jordan became speaker, then I think the Democrats might regret this.
Yes.
So I think it's a bit different, because this single vote motion to remove speaker was specifically brokered by Gaetz for his single vote to support McCarthy. And he used it. So I don't know, is he being prophetic to be able to foresee that he would need to use it several months later, 9 months later? I mean, I just felt like, that's why, remember in that episode, we talked about why you have this vote. And a lot of people are very strange, and they'll be like, wow, who can be the speaker? Anyone can remove you. Well, it's because you promised to do the thing. If you do what you promised, nobody will challenge you.
Yeah, I think Gaetz really showed something that is very ethical, in a sense that he held his speaker to the promises that were made, because these were the promises that were brokered back in January and February. So that's the thing, that they were holding him accountable. So I think that's really what is lacking here in Malaysia, because yes, we have the party whip and things like that, but then at the end of the day, Gaetz really demonstrated that sort of ethic, that he is answerable first to the voters. Because yes, despite the challenges that he might be facing within his own party, what he demonstrated was that, hey, I'm answerable to my voter.
Just to remind our viewers and listeners, this event was historical because never before a speaker where the party holds the majority has been kicked out through a vote. So the last one, John Bonner, he wasn't kicked out because they couldn't pass the legislation. He decided to resign. That was different. This was the first time the majority party speaker got kicked out. Unprecedented. But now let's look at one of these articles, and I think we're going to kind of pivot back to Malaysia. And now this is a very recent article by Miriam Mokhtar. It's called The Effects of NEP on National Psyche. Okay, now we're not going to talk about NEP so much, but I'm interested in the introduction because, and here's the thing which really captured the idea and the emotion we want to convey out today. And she started with this: which prime minister is brave enough to bail the cat? Ding, 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 and remove the new economic policy, especially as the Malay elite are known to be its main beneficiaries. Now, we talked about it a few times, but wow, she put it as clear as day, right? And now, of course, whenever we say Malay elite, we have to always plus cronies, MCA, MIC, GPS, etc., etc. Now, we talked many times already, we are not in the business of always looking in the past, always cannot forgive and move on. That's not the purpose. But the fact that we're still talking about NEP and Malay elite is because the policy still continue. So what do you reckon? Do you agree that the elite are the main beneficiaries?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, who else you do see? I mean, over the last, really, I mean, even if you just look at all the articles and even the development of Malaysian economy, you really see that there is just a certain group of people that really, really benefited from it. I mean, you're talking about GLCs. You're talking about like certain groups that are just too big to be named. I mean, the conglomerates, a lot of them, they are Malay elites.
Yeah, and the thing about, of course, Malay elites, they are at the forefront. They are really the name, they get the shares, the equity and things like that. But I mentioned the cronies also because the non-Malay elite also flourish. When I say flourish, benefited from the whole thing. And I kind of look at that description and think about what Gaetz was doing, because he was really fighting the elite, the economic elite, the political elite, because you mentioned that one of McCarthy's strengths was fundraising. He was called a fundraising machine. But where do you think the money comes from? See that's why in US one of the worst political. I mean, they have many good political points, but one of the worst was really their lobbying. Their lobby, they call the lobby an industry. Basically, you need an entire industry to go and fight for laws that will be beneficial to the companies and things like that. So that's why one of Donald Trump's proposed restriction is that if you are a congressman, you are a senator, you work for federal governments, you work for any part of government, within the first 5 years after you left your position, you are not allowed to be in lobby business, because you still have the influence and things. After 5 years, well, it's okay, because maybe your influence will be diminishing already. Imagine you are cabinet minister, you are senator. The moment you retire, you still have the greatest amount of influence, right? So that's the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are just thinking that the moment that McCarthy is being ousted, that's it. Like, that's the end of him. But people still have to understand that he has tremendous influence. I mean, he still has like 100 over Republicans that are really just behind him, because he has to give his blessing. I mean, even if Jim Jordan is going to be, because he just put his name on the table. And even him, he also has to get the approval and blessing from McCarthy. And then the whole team is going to just rally behind him.
Yeah, he's not going to be in obscurity. I mean, I remember the last establishment speaker, Paul Ryan, right? Now he's like a board member of Fox and very, very anti-Trump. And so that's the thing, that they still have influence, especially right at the point they're exiting. Their influence don't just be gone, right?
Well, actually, that brings to my mind, I mean, speaking of McCarthy, I mean, I really can't help but just think about the influence that our Deputy Prime Minister has as well. I mean, obviously he's able to pull some strings.
You're talking about Fadila?
No, I'm talking about
Zahid.
Yeah, I mean, people are as unhappy as they are. He still has his own strength in terms of some of this. The fact that he was able to rally support. I mean, him being the president, I mean, of course, that itself already yielded much influence. But I guess I'm more for the position whereby you previously mentioned in our previous episodes and things like that the political persecution has to stop at one point. And why can't it stop with him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, it's like, even if, some people are talking about the possibility of Najib being free at some point. I mean, I always felt it's a given, that his sentence is kind of symbolic to say that no one is above the law. But what is the benefit of locking him up for 12 years? And I really believe that the moment, people felt like he won't come back to politics anymore, he'll be out. That's my... I guess it's part of the whole mindset that we talk about, that we should have a cut-off point, and otherwise it's like all the medieval, all the kung fu wuxia stuff we watch, right? You kill my father, so the next generation will come out and kill your father, and then the next generation will come. So it's a never-ending vengeance kind of thing. But we should have a... Kind of remind me of Hong Kong when they started the anti-corruption, and they did draw a line and arrested the police chief, and he was even brought to UK and things like that. Then after that, I think they say they won't prosecute everyone else before. So I think we should do that, right?
Yes.
But anyway, we want to come back to almost our final point already, and it's really what would be a comparable situation in Malaysia. In fact, that was what kind of caused us to want to do this episode, right? So imagine this. So now we have the unity government, right? Imagine a few members of parliament from unity government. They all decided to work with Perikatan Nasional, and somehow they caused a significant parliament vote to be passed. So it could be a budget vote, it could be a no confidence against Prime Minister, all kind of things. And so that would be similar to what Gaetz did. But then, why would they want to do that? And the reason would be because the unity government had continually break their promises. So that's the thing. So that's why the reaction from a lot of the Republicans accusing Gaetz of being a traitor is very similar to people saying, you want to destabilize the unity government, you want the Green Wave to come, you want Hawang Adi to become Prime Minister. So immediately, I get that kind of emotion, and unfortunately I have to use this word, the self-righteousness of the party that don't need to be named. But I guess it is a whole gang in the unity government, and also a lot of Pakatan Harapan supporters, unfortunately, because they are so afraid of certain things, they will be saying, it's okay. So of course, it hasn't happened yet. But if a Gaetz incident is to happen in Malaysia, it will be like that. And so what do you think? Do you think it can happen?
Maybe. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, people have to really draw a cutoff. I mean, not just to the political persecution, but also a cutoff to when are you going to justify the formation of unity government without any sort of performance? I mean, at the end of the day, you have to understand that, yes, although we have a voting system that comes every 5 years, it doesn't mean that people are not frustrated. People are not running out of patience just waiting for you to perform. Because how long more are you going to compromise? I'm talking about DAP. I'm talking about Pakatan Harapan, like really the PKR leaders and things like that. I mean, because you can't be just wanting to have support without giving something in return to the public. And the very first thing, like we mentioned in the past few episodes, that really we want to see affirmative action being taken away. Then why not we start with local election and things like that? I mean, really just giving accountability back to the people, and really, because I guess it's a bit of an oxymoron if on one hand you say we want decentralization, but on the other hand you continuously want big government. You continuously want more spending and more spending, and how do? You just be like Robin Hood, tax the rich, give to the poor. So I don't think that's a workable situation in Malaysia, because obviously you want to have more investment coming into Malaysia, and obviously it has to be somewhat prosperous even for the T20 group of people. So we're not just talking about Malay elites, but you still have a lot of other intermediary sort of T20s that maybe just pass M, middle class, and then just went into T. Then suddenly you say, hi, am I going to raise the tax?
Yeah. I mean, it's like you can try to help certain segment of society, but you can't. I mean, basically, if you look at what's happening in America, is they are spending beyond their means. And in Malaysia, partially also, we are spending beyond our means. So when that happens, you kind of have to rearrange whatever resources you have. And that's one of the things I feel, that Singapore is better than us. It is the way they are more disciplined in spending. I mean, they have so much more national reserve than us, but still, they're kind of prudent when it comes to spending. And so I guess that, we have to give credit when it's due.
Yes.
And they are really much more disciplined than us. Because we kind of behave. Malaysia has been living paycheck to paycheck. I'm talking about at the national level, treasury. But anyway, that was what really stirred Gaetz, because when you think about 40 trillion debt, and now I just look at some of the outrage again, and somebody was just commenting and say, look, you all were angry at Gaetz for removing a speaker who did not fulfill his promises. Where was your outrage when the Democrats controlled Congress, did many other things, when funding was not given to secure the border, when Obamacare came, very quickly Obamacare basically came and, government want to socialize the whole medicine, and you need money if you want to give good treatment to everyone.
Yep.
You see, the whole thing is government, yes, can take care of your health, but basic level. You want additional benefits, then you have to pay for more. But what Obamacare did was that it tries to give additional care, including all the gender assignment, abortion, to everyone. Then those middle class with good coverage will have to cover for them. So Lyra, let's say you have good coverage, you pay $8,000, suddenly it becomes $70,000. That was Obamacare. And I think when I first heard about this explanation, it makes sense to me. Because it's socialism. Take from everyone and distribute, and eventually everyone must have less. But anyway, where was the outrage? Where was the outrage when hundreds of billions were spent on Ukraine or other nation? And that's why I immediately came back to here, and it's like, if something like that really happened, the scenario, the hypothetical scenario, it has not happened yet, thank God. But if it happened, then people will be saying the same thing. Where is the outrage when unity government continue to use Sedition Act, continue to push for Malay agenda, continue to defend affirmative action? I think they will have no way to hide. And that's why I don't hope for that to happen. I hope Prime Minister, we kept saying, right, we have great hope that he will do well because we saw the potential that he could. And I mean, he still has time, and that's why Gaetz gave McCarthy 9 months. And we said, look, I think Anwar should be given 2 years. I don't know. We're not here to draw artificial line and things like that. I mean, he looked like he's going to be secure for the next 4 years. He looks like it. But still, if they continue to break promises and this kind of event happen, people will be like, where is the outrage when you break all the promises? But anyway, we want to end with this, and we kind of put a title here, right? I mean, as voters, as citizens, we're talking about mindset, right? We have certain mindset, we talked about a few times already, that we have to move away from big government. Now, Lyra, maybe just very quickly explain to our listeners and viewers why big government is not good.
Well, big government means bigger funding, bigger spending. I mean, especially because you do need like a lot of people to feed. Literally, I mean, we're just talking about really basic things like
Is it socialist or is it linked or they are quite separate, you think?
Yeah, I would think that at the end of the day, to satisfy this group of, we're talking about the general rakyat. To satisfy them, with the bigger government, I think it is really, at the end of the day, it boils down to socialism. Mm-hmm. Because, I guess it's kind of like a vicious cycle whereby you continuously have to maintain the welfare of the people, and then all this thing comes back to the government. So to maintain this welfare, you need bigger spending. To maintain this welfare, you need bigger spending. So it's really like, the way that I look at it, it's really like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, like NAP sort of gave us a microcosm of the whole thing, right? It's quite wide, it's nationwide, but we have kind of 30, 40 years of data already. You really it's not the Malays' fault, but you cause them to become entitled. And that's what Miriam Motas said in that article. Whether intentional or not, you cause the Malay to become entitled, and you, as a result, you weaken them. She said that herself. And I think I couldn't agree more, because when big government really, yes, socialists usually come in because it helps. It helps for you to become big government, but it's really the mindset that I know best.
Yep.
Again, we have to give credit when it's due. I would say the only successful big government, somewhat successful, will be Singapore. And, there are many reasons, but, I don't agree with that philosophy, because if I have a choice, I don't want to stay in that limitation. But for a lot of people, if they are on that island, they will have a reasonably good life. But that's not what I want. But they really encompasses big government, I know best. And to do that, socialists have to come in because you need to give handout. And when people start to say, it's like children, right? Children say, I can't do this, I can't do that. And, if you have a big government mindset, you do it for them. Then eventually, all of a sudden, when they reach 18, 19, and you realize, oh crap, they have not learned anything because I've been teaching them that parents know best. It's the same, by then they're useless already. So that's why socialist mindset, it seems like a relief at the time, right? Oh, we need more money, our government give you money. Oh, cannot increase our petrol. Okay, everyone maintain it, 2 ringgit, 220, whatever. But then at some point, the money will run out. What would you do then? So this is a mindset. Okay, Lara, let's finish with this. Okay, I think enough ranting for the day already. So give us a few points how to shift away from the big government mindset. I mean, we already talked about one, which is having local election, but that's going to be quite far away, I think, because I don't feel both Unity and PN are in a mood to relinquish power because they're both a bit under siege, right? So, but what are the things? Maybe some practical things, how do you, if, maybe you can just give some tips, encourage our viewers and listeners. How can we, I think we start with mindset first, right?
Well, I guess first we have to break away from the mindset of entitlement. I mean, recently I was just listening to Candace Owen, and she was at this Turning Point USA event, and one of this, I think she's a transgender, so she just came out to me, so you're talking about paid event. So this person who is entitled, so she's basically like first in the line to make sure that she has a ticket. So when she gets in, and she was just asking her a question of, so how are you gonna convince us who are actively being traumatized by your presence here? You're talking about you yourself paying ticket to listen to this. You have the choice of walking away, and after school you can just go back. That's it. So I like Candace Owen's reply. She said, well, life's tough. Get a helmet, man. So literally, I would say I think that's the right sort of mindset that we should have. Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, really, life is tough. I mean, no one is saying that life is easy, it's going to be smooth sailing. Yes, there were moments that it's going to be smooth sailing, but a lot of times it's full of challenges. But at the end of the day, we have to be of good cheer. I mean, at the end of the day, we really just have to view all this as challenges to grow and really just get out of that. But I guess that really goes back to sort of the parenting that we have gone through. Mm-hmm. I mean, will we do our parents proud? Because if we are going to be that entitled brat and really just go around and shitting about every other thing, I think that's really a bad attitude to have at the end of the day, because that's really the sort of things you think just because you have worked long enough, but you're being a very poor performance sort of worker, and you say, hey, but I'm entitled to increment because that's inflation year after year. I don't think that's the right mindset to have, even as an employee. So really, I mean, that is the first thing that we really have to break away from it. I mean, because otherwise, how are you going to be prosperous? Otherwise, how is everyone going to get a shot at really the pursuit in happiness? So really, I think moving away from entitlement mindset, that is really one of the very, very first step. I think that's something that each one of us can do. And that's something that even parents can teach their children not to be entitled. Yes, there's a way to love your children, but also there's a limit to how you're going to train your children up in the ways that they are going to live their life. Eventually, I mean, you don't want your children to become like nuisance to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, somewhat related to what you were saying is, one of the notes I put here is we have to learn to take personal responsibilities for our decision. And, recently I was just watching documentary, David Beckham's documentary. It's very, very interesting because sometimes you look at him, you look at Porsche, and you're like, oh, these people are so privileged and entitled. But then the documentary really painted a very interesting light that, the parents were in the interview quite a lot. And very often, they will be there alongside him, but they kind of encourage him, look, are you sure, if you're going to do this, when you want to move to US, when you want to go to Madrid and things like that, they ask him, are you sure? And basically, they let him decide. They are there to support him, but they want him to understand that there are consequences for every decision. And he said, there are consequences, talk about the Argentina red card and things like that he has to live with that forever. But that's the thing, right? We decide what we want, and if it is a mistake, if we voted for something that turned out to be a mistake, then you get another chance 5 years' time, own up to your mistake, and maybe
move on.
Move on. All right, so it's been an interesting discussions, and I think that's all the time we have for today. And I don't know, we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. Maybe a new speaker, maybe something huge in Malaysia. And then we'll be up here to
Well, I
report.
hope they're going to get a new speaker by next Monday.
Yeah, I think so. It looks to be Jim Jordan, we shall see.
Yes.
All right, until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.